We're going to take you back in time now to when people arrived in North America. Tonight we have an exclusive look into research published just today that overturns all current theories. Scientists have long assumed nomads from Asia crossed the Bering Strait and came down a land corridor about 13,000 years ago. But surprising new evidence indicates people arrived here at least 1,000 years before that and by an entirely different route. Our colleague Frederic Zelak from Radio-Canada brings us the inside story of what might be a scientific revolution.
We still really don't know when the Americas were first people.
Suddenly we have people being here south of the ice before it opened up.
Now the tide has really turned, and we're starting to see that there were probably multiple pathways into the Americas.
It doesn't look like there's much going on in the small town of Paisley, Oregon, population 226. There's an old saloon and a mosquito festival. But something nearby is setting the international scientific community abuzz. It's happening here in a bunch of old caves north of town.
That logo on there has been recorded so I know what belongs together.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Archaeologist Dennis Jenkins and his crew are looking for unusual treasures. It looks like Indiana Jones meets CSI.
We suit up and put it immediately into these sterile containers. It will never be opened again until we send it to Copenhagen.
This rare object being sent off to a Danish lab is called a coprolite. It's really just a chunk of fossilized excrement. But these prehistoric feces could dramatically change our knowledge of the early history of the Americas.
I guess you could call these caves, a time capsule, if you will. It's almost as if nature has said, I'm going to show you the way things used to be.
What's special about this place is its climate. It hardly ever rains here. It's very dry, especially up in those caves. So it's a perfect place to preserve ancient treasures from the past.
Like this grasshopper, looking pretty good considering it's 13,000 years old, or these camel bones, a species long extinct from the continent.
Some of the camel bones that we now know are in excess of 14,000 years old have actually got blood and mummified flesh attached to them. I was just rinsing off one of the camel bones and I could feel the grease coming off on my fingers. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm washing away 14,000-year-old evidence. All right.
Jenkins hoped these caves could also reveal traces of an ancient human occupation, but he never imagined he would make such a groundbreaking discovery.
I excavated to the bottoms of the caves and found a pit that was covered over with a slab, and in that there was just an incredible array of material all in this very confined area. And at the very bottom, or near the very bottom of that pit, and off to one side, we found a coprolite.
Coprolites are rare because feces normally decompose, but in Paisley Caves, they dry up and are preserved. Jenkins wanted to analyze them to determine the diet.
All right, very good.
Since he wasn't sure which ones were human or not, he brought several of them back to his lab at the University of Oregon.
Oh yeah. Now there is a nice coprolite.
It's a pretty one.
Dark color, good size.
Those coprolites were so well preserved that the Danish geneticist suggested that he might be able to extract ancient DNA out of them, something that had never been done before. The results were stunning.
By the time he began to get the results back, he asked me how old these coprolites could be, and at that point I said, well, some of them could be 14,000 years old. And he said, well, we're getting Native American DNA out of it, and I said, well, this is really going to be exciting and controversial information if that's the case.
Jenkins knew he was skating on thin professional ice because, according to the long-accepted theory, there shouldn't be any humans yet in the Americas 14,000 years ago. Textbooks say the first migrants crossed the land bridge from Siberia to Alaska. These mammoth hunters followed an ice-free corridor that opened up east of the Rockies. About 13,000 years ago, they formed the Clovis culture, whose distinct tools have been found across North America. So how can humans be in Paisley Caves almost 1,000 years before Clovis?
So many times people have proposed that they had pre-Clovis and could not eventually prove it or were disproven. So what we did was to date and then redate the coprolites so that we ended up with the same radiocarbon date from 2 excellent labs.
The coprolites were dated to 14,300 years and contained the oldest human DNA ever found in the Americas. But even that evidence was not enough for some skeptics.
Looks like a biface fragment.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, take a look.
That is so awesome. Oh, nice.
The team is looking for ancient stone tools to bolster the evidence. They discovered a few artifacts in the same geological layers where the coprolites were found.
We're getting some scrapers. We're getting the occasional projectile point. We are recovering obsidian flakes. And one of the things it tells us is this is not Clovis. Because we are not seeing the kinds of flakes that people in Clovis cultures made.
These findings raise an even bigger question. Many scientists believe the ice-free corridor east of the Rockies was not yet passable 14,000 years ago. So how did the first migrants get here?
If this evidence is correct, then the previous nice, tight little model that we have begins to unravel. Now we've got a problem, and we need to figure out alternate ways of bringing people here from Siberia.
When we return, how these new discoveries are taking apart a long-standing theory.
Now the tide has really turned, and we're starting to see that there were probably multiple migrations, multiple pathways into the Americas.